My name is Jason, and this is Just Watches. All right, today we have a watch that was very generously lent into the channel for review. This is the Squale 20 Atmos, and this is the 1545. So I've been wanting to get one of these Squales on the channel for a while because I really wanted to compare it head to head with my Steinhardt, and that's just what we're going to do next week. However, this week I just wanted to get a review of this watch all by itself into the channel first before we do that head to head. So as always, we're going to be doing specifications, pros, cons, and then if I think this watch is worth the money. But before we begin, if you're enjoying the contents of this channel, I would love for you to subscribe. And if you like the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much. So starting with the case, it's 40 millimeters in diameter. It's 47.5 millimeters lug to lug, and there's a slight curve down to those lugs. It's 13.5 millimeters thick, and then it has a 20 millimeter lug width. Now the top of the case is brushed, and the sides are all high polished. There's not really a chamfered edge, it just kind of directly transitions over there on the side of the case. And then we do have some crown guards here, but they don't obscure the crown that much, and it's still very easy to operate the crown. Now sized up for my wrist, this weighs in at 156 grams. Now the bracelet starts at 20 millimeters, it tapers down to 18 millimeters, and then it's back up to 20 millimeters on the clasp. It's all brushed along the top and then high polish along the sides. There's solid end links and there's very good integration here to the head of the watch. And then for the clasp, we do have a safety catch, and then it's just a pull deployant. Now the clasp is milled out and it's very solid, and then we do have 4 micro positions here, so you can get a pretty good fit on this watch. There aren't any half links, so keep that in mind, but I think with 4 micro positions you will be able to get a fit. Now there is an very interesting kind of diver's extension. I haven't really seen this style of diver's extension. It does open from there, and you are going to want to deploy it if you're going to want to move this micro position. I won't deploy it here on camera, but it just deploys out this way. Kind of an interesting system, and it kind of tucks it up underneath the clasp there. So sizing is accomplished by using screw pins, which is always nice to see, and overall the bracelet is quite robust. The only one minor gripe I have about this bracelet is this fold-over safety catch is a little thin and it feels a little bit out of place on this otherwise quite robust bracelet. So we do have a screw-in case back, which is going to help provide that 200 meters of water resistance. You can see there's a matte finish in the center, and then they actually raised and high-polished 1545 and the Squale brand name there, which is kind of a cool detail. Now, this is powered by the ETA 2824-2, and that's an elaborate grade movement. So that's a 28,800 vibration per hour, and then that's adjusted to 3 positions, and it should give you an accuracy of plus or minus 20 seconds a day. This also hacks and hand winds, has a 42-hour power reserve, and a quick set date. But we will get it on the Timegrapher later in the video. Now that 7 millimeter screw down crown has some great knurling on it. The knurling is matte finished. It's really substantial. It makes it really easy to operate this watch. There's no problem even with those crown guards. And then you do have a high polish finish on the top of the crown, and then deeply etched matte finish of the Squale logo. So great crown on this. Very easy to operate the watch via this crown. Now the crystal is a sapphire crystal, and it does have AR coating on the inside of the crystal. And then you can see there is a Cyclops here, and this Cyclops is doing a great job of magnification. They advertise this as a 2.5 magnification Cyclops, and it does look like that to me. I think this is the best magnification I've seen on a Cyclops on any watch I've ever handled, and that's what I want to see. I don't really want a Cyclops for its aesthetic value. I want it to have function. So if you put a Cyclops on the watch, it better magnify the date, and it does in this case. So I'm very happy with it because it does make it very easy to tell the date. The only minor issue with this one is it's slightly askew of that date window, but the magnification is so strong, it's something you'd almost never notice unless you pay very close attention. So the 120 click unidirectional bezel has some nice knurling around the edge, and it is quite a pleasure to use. It's very easy, there's very substantial, a nice ratcheting click as you use it, and the action is smooth and consistent throughout, and then everything does line up right at that 12 o'clock position. And then you have the Lume pip there. The insert here, I believe, is aluminum. I know they make these in ceramic too, but this does look like the aluminum insert, and it matches the dial really well. They match that brown almost perfectly, and then they use those gold tones for all of the writing on the bezel insert itself. And overall, the color scheme of this watch is beautifully executed, and the bezel plays a large part in that. So check out this brown root beer dial. It has a very dynamic sunburst effect. You can see it really plays with my studio lights here. kind of ranging between very deep, almost black, and then bright, much lighter root beer color, soda colored brown. So a really great dial. And then I love, it has a much more retro feel here. The indices aren't applied, it's just Lume plots, but then they are edged in gold that does match the hands and then also the gold elements of the bezel. Overall, it's a very warm and inviting feeling. You don't see a lot of brown dial watches, but this one is, I think, perfectly executed. The one thing I'm not a huge fan of on the dial, and Squale tends to do this, it's double branded, so you have the Squale and the logo at the 12 o'clock, and then you have Squale again at the 6 o'clock with 20 atmospheres and the 1545, and then Swiss made framing the 6 o'clock position, and then of course you have that Cyclops on the date, rounding it all out at 3 o'clock. And then there is no chapter ring on this one. The rehaut is actually sloped inwards, which gives the dial a very deep effect. I really like it. It adds a lot of depth and kind of visual interest to the dial and the watch overall. And then in absence of that chapter ring, you do have dashes for each of the minutes around the edge of the dial. But overall, just really well executed. I think this has a very vintage feel, and I just love this color scheme. Now the hands are your classic Mercedes hands there, and they're finished in a gold tone that basically perfectly matches the gold that they used to frame the indices, so I like that attention to detail. The minute hand is just long enough that is reaching out to the dashes along the edge of the dial, which I always like to see, and then they have a long second hand with that lollipop end. Now all of the indices and the hands are loomed. We are going to get a lume shot later. The lume is responsive, and it does have a long duration, but it's not as bright as I would have liked. You'll see as we pair it up against Seiko and their nuclear Lume Bright Lume. So as you can see, the Lume it's responsive and it's there. It's just not as bright as Seiko's Lume Bright, and that's something I like to see on this watch. Just apply better lume in this case. So popping on the Timegrapher, you can see we're getting about 9 seconds a day. Very healthy amplitude, minimal beat error, and then 28,800 vibrations per hour. So this watch is operating well within its specified parameters. So here is the watch on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. 40 millimeters is kind of a magic size. It's going to fit a wide variety of different wrist sizes, and then 47.5 millimeters lug to lug. You can see it doesn't overhang. Now I did fail to mention these solid end links are proud of the actual lug to lug length. So the true lug to lug is probably 52 millimeters, but the end links do curve down quite dramatically, so it doesn't really feel like it adds to the lug to lug overall. On other watches, sometimes if it is pronounced past the actual lugs and it comes out straight, it will actually make the watch feel like it has a much longer lug to lug. But because of this curve down, it's not the case on this watch, and it sits very comfortably on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. So pros and cons. Well, starting with the pros, you get a nice set of features at this price point. If you want to move up to that ETA movement, this is a pretty good price for that. It's kind of on par with Steinhardt, where you get one at about $500, which is just a bit north of what you're going to pay for like that King Samurai I reviewed, which just has the 4R35. If you want that slightly nicer Swiss-made movement, this is a great price point to enter it there. Secondly, the color scheme on this watch is awesome. It's so warm and inviting. It's much, I don't know if it really comes through in the video, but in person, it's a very nice color scheme, and it's very well executed. I really like this root beer colorway on this watch. And then the Cyclops actually magnifies 2.5 times, and I really like to see that. I really don't like when they put a Cyclops on there that doesn't have strong magnification. And then finally, the bracelet is solid and it has good integration to the head of the watch and is sized with screw links. Now, as for the cons, there is one slight con with that bracelet. The safety catch of the clasp just feels very thin and is otherwise kind of feels out of place on an otherwise robust bracelet. I would like to see that improved at this price point. And then secondly, as you saw in the Lume shot, it's just not very bright. I really don't understand why brands at this price point, and even way more expensive price points than this, just don't give us good applications of Lume. I don't feel like it would add that much to the cost, and I'd be happy to pay even slightly a little bit more for really bright Seiko-esque Lume on a watch like this. So is this watch worth the money? Well, I've heard a lot of great things about Squale, and I would say this watch did meet my expectations. It's about $570 MSRP. You're getting a very solid watch. I feel like this watch is pretty much on par with the Steinhardt, but it has a much more vintage feel. Now, obviously, the design of this watch is an homage, so that might bother some people, but if it doesn't bother you and you're looking to get into this style of watch, and especially in some of the more fun colorways that Squale offers, this is a great option. And like I said before, you're getting that, what I would consider slightly nicer movement with the ETA, over, some of the other micro brands and more affordable watches in this end of the market do rely on those Seiko movements. So if this design speaks to you, what I would really recommend is these watches are very popular. They get turned over a lot. You can pick one up used you can get them between $350 and $400 probably. So that might be an option. Look for one that maybe somebody picked up, they didn't really bond with, and they're quickly flipping. You can save a lot on these, as they do tend to take a hit when they are resold. So there you have it, the Squale 20 Atmos Root Beer. What do you guys think of this watch? Please leave a comment below. As always, if you're enjoying the content of this channel, I invite you to subscribe. And if you're liking the contents of this individual video, please give it a thumbs up. That's all for this time. My name is Jason, and you have been watching Just Watches.